We are a marketing services organization. We help businesses get found online, which ultimately means that they're going to have an increase in traffic to their website, which will lead to an increase in leads and then ultimately an increase in sales. And we do this through an integrated process of SEO, email marketing, blogging, website management, and so forth. So we wanted to share some of the tips that we use for ourselves in our own marketing, and also what we use for our customers. And we hope that you'll enjoy this. So Matt, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne Marie, and thanks everyone for attending today as well. We're excited to share some of the data that we see working for so many different people, and share some of these strategies with you as you try to implement some of these on your own, or just kind of maybe trying to get the marketing ball rolling in your organization. Wherever you're at in that life cycle, excited you're along for the ride with us. We will be recording today's session as well, and we'll be sending a copy of that out to all attendees, where we'll make a copy of the slides available as well. So if you are looking for either of those, we'll be emailing those out. If you don't see those, just touch base with Anne Marie, and she'd be happy to get a copy to that with you. To kind of give you a little bit more background on how we've come to some of these 7 strategies, we've been doing internet marketing since the early days, back when Al Gore claimed to have invented it, and the internet was really a lot of web-based forums, and that's where a lot of marketing took place, pre-social media days, pre-Facebook and MySpace and all that. So we've seen quite a bit of evolution in that whole process and marketing strategies that go into a successful campaign. And today we're going to talk through some of those things and what we see as in middle 2015, some of the most successful strategies that we see working for customers. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in here and start taking a look through some of these different strategies. The first thing we want to talk about is a little bit about the buying cycle. Really try to set a baseline of understanding. We're going to move through this pretty quickly to get into the 7 strategies. We kind of like to set this base level of understanding first and foremost, make sure we're all on the same page. So understanding that buying cycle that your customer is going to be going through, or that the person responding to your marketing may be going through, we're really looking at that pain point where they've realized they have a problem, they've realized they have a pain that hopefully you have a product or a solution for. And then the consideration, which is really where they're starting to gather that information. They're looking at different partners to help them with that. The choose, really they're making that choice on who they're going to be going with. And then that initial experience. A lot of people stop the buying cycle where the customer has made their choice, but the customer experience they have is definitely an important part of that buying cycle to make sure you're including. And that's where your customer experience or product delivery team needs to be engaged with marketing to understand the experience you're delivering to your customers. And then the delight phase, where you're actually making sure that you're delighting your customers and helping to turn them into brand evangelists. And as we look at these different stages, we really want to understand what types of content a prospect is going to best respond to at each stage of that buying cycle. People in different parts of that cycle, or what some people would call a sales funnel, all have different needs. They have different types of marketing they're going to respond to. So just a few quick things as we kind of set this framework or set this groundwork for ourselves. What's going through your customer's mind, what's going through your prospect's mind, and then the types of communication. So in that pain point, there's a lot of Googling that's going on in most cases where people are looking for a better way to do this. Is there a better way to find a solution to this problem? They're gathering information on options that they're going to consider in the next stage and gathering that process of looking for a solution. When they get into that consideration phase, they're thinking about what's most important to me when I'm making this decision. How do I choose? How much should I invest? How am I going to measure my return on investment? A lot of those types of things, and this can often be an overwhelming stage for your customers in this whole cycle. So you need to be thinking in your marketing about ways to lessen that overwhelm and to help guide them in that process. And when you guide them down this part of the process, you increase the likelihood they will choose you in the choosing phase, and you build trust and rapport with them. You know, people love to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And establishing that like and trust is a really important part of the consideration phase. And then there's a few pieces of content that they might respond to well in this phase. White papers, ebooks, webinars, those types of pieces of communication that they would be most likely to engage with you on in this part of the process. And then the all-important choose, right? I mean, this is where we all want to be. This is where we get the sale. So definitely an important part of the process to hone in on and understand. But reassuring your prospect or customer that your solution is the right solution, that they're making the right solution. Everybody wants to make a decision. They just don't want to make the wrong decision. And a lot of times fear of making the wrong decision allows people to spend too long in this choose phase because they're afraid of making that wrong partner selection. So you need to be doing things within this to alleviate concerns by letting them hear from current customers, letting them hear success stories, lots of different ways to be kind of touching your customer in this choose phase, but thinking about that. I was just having a conversation with one of the members of our team this morning, actually. We were talking about a customer who's in this choose phase. They've kind of narrowed their decision down to us and one other potential vendor, and I was kind of coaching him on some things that might be good to share in this choose phase. Lots of different pieces of our content that we've developed that be good pieces to share, all about helping that person know they're making the right decision. And then that experience, make sure that the software is being implemented and customized to suit their specific needs. Make sure that you have an A lot of software companies these days are adopting this mentality of a customer success manager, and we love that. At Q4 Launch and Agile Advantage, Q4 Launch is our parent company, but at Agile Advantage, we have a customer experience manager whose role it is to make sure our customers are having a great experience, which ties back into customer service and it ties into customer results. But that's really what it's about, is making sure that your customer is having that great experience, that they understand what's being done, they understand the different steps in the process and that implementation. And thinking about ways that your marketing team needs to be interacting with your customer to solidify your position as a company throughout this phase as well. And then finally, the last thing we're going to touch on before we move into our 7 strategies today is the delight phase. And this is where we really want to build that brand evangelist, making sure that you're hearing things like, I wish I would have purchased the solution sooner. I wish I would have found you sooner. Or I would highly recommend you to peers in the industry. And you're really wanting to continue to position yourself as a thought leadership here. So this is a great place, great opportunity to share continued content that's relevant to your industry, relevant to what you do, to continue that thought leadership position, continue that trust factor of that know, like, and trust we talked about earlier. Great opportunity to push product upgrades as well, keeping them in the loop on what your development team might be working on from a product perspective, and keeping that in front of people so that they know you're being proactive in developing further solutions for them. And it keeps them from starting to look around if maybe your product's not meeting one of their needs. It keeps them from looking around by communicating to them through this delight phase. And then the other big part of this that we're really looking for is that referral that can come through this delight phase, making sure that your customers have become brand evangelists and that they're going to be out there being your advocate in the industry for you. That is so, so valuable when you have loyal customers who will speak up in a community forum or will speak up at a community event and really recommend your company and refer your company. So that's just a few things as kind of we're talking through the rest of our conversation today. We might want to be looking at thinking through the rest of these strategies, because as we talk about these, it's going to see how does this plug into the different stages of the buying cycle. So you'll see some connection here, but using the 7 strategies to address the different parts of the buying cycle is really where we're trying to pull these two things together, these two elements of this together. So let's dive in and really kind of look at how do we go into increasing our website traffic. So if we understand the buyer's journey or the buying cycle, how do we go ahead and start moving traffic to the website? And strategy number 1, we're huge believers of the power of email marketing, is to send more email, right? That may seem kind of obvious. At first we're like, oh, send more email. The last thing I want to do is get more email. In fact, that is the common misconception we hear most, is that prospects don't want more email, or my customers don't want more email. And I would say they don't want more junk email, to be more specific. Unfortunately, a lot of companies just send junk because they know they need to be sending emails, but they're not really looking into their database to understand what the customer is after, what the customer wants. But knowing that the American worker spends 28% of their day on email, you need to be actively engaged with email marketing and using this as a part of your thought leadership strategy to acquire new customers, attract new customers, but then also to retain the customers you have and delight them throughout the delight phase. So as we look at this, as we look at sending more email, what does it really look like to do that well? Well, let's dive in here and take a look at that. This is an example. Some of you may have come to our webinar today by getting an email like this. We're going to talk about some of the elements that this email campaign had in it, specifically because we have sent millions of emails. We send about 1 million emails a month as a company. So we have a lot of data on what people engage with, what they click on, and so forth. But as we do that, as we monitor that, and we look at analytics, consistently we see spikes in traffic when we're sending email campaigns out. And of all the marketing mediums, email is said to have one of the highest returns on investment from an overall spend to get it accomplished. But it's also the only medium that I've ever seen that has the ability to drive spikes in traffic like this. And no matter how much traffic you may have today, or no matter how big your database is today, email is absolutely a strong medium to be able to deliver spikes in traffic to your website. And spikes are a good thing in the sense that they're bringing a lot of people to your site over usually a 2 to 3 day period, with most of it concentrated the day you send the campaign out, and ideally to take a specific action. Bring them back to the site to get them to take a specific action that you've kind of laid out ahead of time for them. So let's look at this a little bit. What we have found to be kind of the sweet spot from a frequency perspective is 2 times per month. The first email campaign we'll often send is to highlight the thought leadership, really making sure that you're positioning yourself in the industry. And the email I showed you earlier, or that you may have got that brought you here today, is very much that style of leadership. It's an invitation to a webinar, which starts to position you as a thought leader on a specific subject and gather people around you who may be looking for information on that type of topic. The second email campaign, we usually will highlight more of our blog content and so forth. So this displays where you'll highlight product promotions, improved functionality or product updates, perhaps, but also just blogs that your team may be writing or that you may be writing about solving specific problems in the industry. And when you're able to share those blogs, that's another great way to get people back to your website where they may interact with or trigger on another call to action or another lead generation opportunity and take another step down that buying cycle or that buyer's journey that we talked about earlier. So really strong opportunity to do that. The other thing we know about email marketing is that about 5% of people, and this is a rough statistic, rough average, but about 5% of people may be in market for what you do at any given time. So if you have a database you picked up at a trade show or that you worked really hard to get through sweat equity at a trade show and shaking hands and doing all that, there may only be 5% of those people in that database who are ready to make a decision. And if you have a bigger purchase, it's a larger product or a larger price tag, your buying cycle may be a bit long. So you don't know which 5% of people in your database are actually ready to make a purchase until you start marketing to them. And email marketing is a great way to do that because it starts to show intent or starts to show interest. And you can start using it to see the behavior of people on your list, see what they're clicking on, what they're engaged with, and start tailoring your message and your communication to them accordingly. So it's a really neat opportunity to help you hone in on that 5% of your database that may be ready to make a decision on something like that. As you're looking at email, we're going to share a few tips that can make it successful here as well. And the first is to use great subject lines. This seems like it should be pretty obvious in 2015, but it never fails. We still see a lot of emails that actually come through I see a lot that come through to me. Different people see a lot that come through for various reasons. And the subject lines are just not where they need to be. They're just not communicating well. They're not capturing people's attention. So we unfortunately still see a lot of that not example coming through, that newsletter issue 11, whereas what we'd love to see more of is 5 ways automation drives profits, right? I mean, the number in there, 5 ways, makes me think, okay, that's something I can quickly and easily digest. And then that last part there drives profits, right? As business owners, as business people, that's often on all of our minds, is how do we drive greater profitability out of our companies? So using some specific examples to really be able to hone in and capture people's attention, and then making sure that your content actually matches up to that. So here's a few tips for great content. One, of course, make sure your content matches your subject line. You don't want that old bait and switch in email marketing because people will lose trust with your email and they'll stop opening it. But making sure your content matches your subject line. Using great photos to create an emotional response. Photos people can connect with. So the photo we chose in our campaign, if you think back to it, that visual that was on the screen a few minutes ago, was that business owner who looked like he's traveling, he's got his laptop or his iPad, he's doing his thing, and we're using imagery that connects with our customer because it's typically who our customer is. So choosing your photos specifically to do that. If you're trying to communicate that, we sent a campaign out last week about stopping the frustration, and the photo we used was a business owner or a person at their computer that looked super frustrated. So making sure that your photography is being used well in your email campaigns to kind of pull about that emotional response. A lot of people just kind of skip over the whole photography part of email and think it's mostly about text, when in reality it's not. And then the last part, using calls to action or buttons to drive clicks. Making sure that you're making it obvious what you want people to click on and using buttons. You'd be amazed if you're sending email campaigns out now and you're using a lot of links that are just text. You're just highlighting some text and linking that. If you change that text to actually buttons, how much your click-through rate may go up with just that one change. Really strong opportunity to make a big impact without doing really all that much more work. And more email marketing software is actually starting to have button generators built right into it, which is really helpful as well. So it makes it a lot easier to get that. And that last tip, and this may seem obvious, but again, it just ties back. Understanding that consumers behave differently, that people buy differently, that they learn differently. Link everything. I'm more of a visual learner, so when I browse the web, I tend to always click photos. I rarely click headlines. I rarely click text. I click a photo because I expect that image to take me where that story goes. But I'm a visual learner, and more people are just becoming that way. They're reading less and less. So you need to make sure that you're linking everything. Again, a lot of times we'll see people just link a little bit of text. You know, they'll not link the image. They'll not link a headline. They'll just link a little bit like read more at the end of the whole diatribe about what the campaign is about. And there's so many people who don't make it down to that read more link. Not saying you shouldn't have one. I'm just saying don't bank on that for your links to be able to get people back to your site. But if you really focus on some of those big things, the headlines, the images, and then that read more link at the end of it, you're going to get the person who is text-driven and wants to click the headline. They move quickly, but they want that text. You're going to get the visual person who really wants to see that visual, and that's what's going to make them click is a great photo in your campaign. But then you're also going to get that detail-oriented person that's going to read the whole campaign before they make a decision on whether or not they're going to click. So you're really speaking to those three different types of buyers by making sure that you're linking things appropriately. And then the big thing here, and we see this a lot as well, a lot of the tips that we're sharing today as parts of our strategies come from seeing people do things in their marketing that may not be ideal. So a lot of real-world experience going into these tips because we know if we see other people doing it, you may be falling into some of these as well. But one of the biggest things we see with email is that people may do it once or twice and then they give up and they don't do it again. And for us, that's like, why you did it once and you never did it again? And I think that's because people just get busy. Like they might send a campaign, it might be so successful, then they're busy trying to deliver that product or service that they've just kind of sold. But what you really need to do is commit to doing it those 2 times a month and make sure you're committed to staying on schedule and not giving up. It breaks my heart when we're doing an analytics analysis with somebody and you see a spike in traffic and you're like, hey, Joe, what happened on August 2nd? What happened that day in your marketing? Well, and Joe takes a minute. He tries to figure it out. Oh, I think I sent an email campaign out. Absolutely. I bet you did because I see that analytics pattern. I know what that looks like. You see that spike in the Richter scale or spike in traffic. That tells me we had an earthquake that day. That tells me that we sent an email campaign that day. But Joe, why did you not do that the rest of the year? Why haven't you done that since? So make sure that you're doing this consistently. And as we're thinking about this and how much traffic should we be expecting to get from this source, we kind of use this rule of thumb. However big your database is, whether that's 100 people and you're a startup and you're just getting going, or it's 10,000 people or 100,000 people, think about your database and multiply that by 8%. We like to shoot for about a 4% click-through rate per campaign, and then we're going to send 2 campaigns per month, so we're going to get 8% of that back to our website in any given month. So a goal for 8% of your database to result in monthly traffic to your website. And that's important because if you're already sending email, that's maybe a barometer for you to use. Is my email performing as well as it should or not? I just got a phone this morning with a prospective customer, and he was, oh, yeah, I'm sending email, I'm doing those things, that's great. But his email wasn't performing the way it should be. Yeah, he was sending the campaigns, but the performance wasn't there. And you've got to tie those things together, the execution, but then also the tracking, measurement, and adjustment for the performance piece of it. We talk a lot about a process: plan it, do it, check it, adjust it. You may have heard that before, but that should be throughout what we're doing, but especially in our email. Plan it, do it, check it, adjust it. And unfortunately, a lot of people skip that check it, adjust it part of that cycle. And by really honing in on that, you're able to drive greater results for your business. So Anne-Marie, I think, sent workbooks out to everybody. If you didn't get one, you can shoot her an email. She'll be happy to follow up with you. I know we had some people registering kind of all the way up until our kickoff here today. So if you're one of those people you didn't get it, don't worry. Just email Anne-Marie and she'll get you a copy of it. I have this in here, so if you're watching the recording of this or you're following along with the slides on your own time, you can use this as a trigger to open up your workbook to strategy number 1, send more email. And we put that workbook together for you, so you'd have a great way to kind of walk through that and have some great prompts in there to help you as you're developing your own strategy. So great time. We're not going to pause today to do this, but encourage you to, as you're reflecting back on this and kind of working through how to execute this, this would be a good time to go ahead and do that. So moving right along here, strategy number 2 is to write more blogs, right? Send more email, write more blogs. A common misconception that we hear is that no one reads blogs anymore. And that is absolutely not true. Blogging or content marketing is the fastest growing segment of internet marketing. Those two terms, content marketing and inbound marketing specifically, are getting now more search on Google than the actual term internet marketing. So as we look at how marketing is changing, a lot of things are shifting. The position is shifting from just general internet marketing to really focusing in on content marketing or inbound marketing. People are getting smarter about what they're looking for, and they're understanding that content or blogs is a great way to attract potential customers to your business. And as we look at this and we look at the way Google impacts our business and Google can deliver customers to us, this is an important thing we want to hone in on and think about. And that's that all Google updates, all the panda, penguin, pigeon, all the fuzzy P animals you can throw out there, every update Google has ever made has rewarded great content creation and blogging strategies. So if you think about that, if you're engaged in search engine optimization on some level, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but if you're engaged on some level of an SEO strategy and you're trying to beat that system, the best way, the best place you could be investing your time and resources is into content creation and doing that consistently. When people are asking Google questions, Google should be showing them your site. When people have that pain point I talked about earlier, they recognize that pain point, they go to Google, they'll try to find a solution, find some fix for their pain. You want to be the people that they find with a solution to their problem. And when you kind of intersect their world at that point through content marketing, you earn the opportunity to earn their business. You've been there, you've educated them, you're starting to build trust. Now they know that you exist, they found your brand, they have the opportunity to buy from you. Whereas before they may not have ever known you existed as a company at all, and content marketing has brought them to your doorstep with the ability to start helping them solve their problem through content marketing and blogging. So we really wanted to break down that misconception that people absolutely are reading blogs, and the way people are discovering blogs, while we talked a lot about Google in the last 60 seconds, the way people are discovering blog content is changing a lot in 2015 as well. We're excited to see some of those changes just about the whole process of content discovery. And it's kind of a new frontier with the way a lot of the things are being evolved. I don't have time to dive into all that today, but some cool things you can really see out there if you're really honed in and kind of a marketing geek like we are. And as we look at this and kind of see different things, this is an example we pulled today from our parent company, Q4 Launch. And this actually came out of a question that they were getting from a lot of their customers. It was this term, how much does living social cost? This was back in 2012 where it was really just getting its kind of start to everything. A lot of people were asking that question. And for the longest time, Q4launch.com, this blog was ranked #1 on Google for this search term and drove thousands of visits a month to the website just from this search term. So what was just an answer to customer questions and giving them a place to go to turn so you didn't have to have an hour-long phone conversation about it every time, turned into a huge source of traffic back to the website here. Then we pulled this screenshot this morning. It's now ranked 4th on Google. So Living Social has actually now jumped ahead of us. We did outrank them for quite a while, which a lot of people ended up calling our office thinking we were Living Social, which was kind of frustrating, but showed that it was working. And now it's fourth. I mean, this blog hasn't been touched in over 3 years, and it's still fourth and still driving thousands of visits. So great opportunity to answer customer questions, and then when people ask Google that question, it shows them your website. That's the whole idea there, and kind of a great internal case study of how that works. And we've got hundreds of case studies of how this works. We just thought we'd share one of our own as we look through that. And then as we kind of look at that, it's just making sure that we're driving traffic with that. This is a screenshot from our site that 6,542 visits came from our blog in the first year we had it live, and that 5,500 of those were from organic search. So as we're looking at how do people discover our website, how do people discover our product, this is a huge opportunity. And that trend line you see right there, we're going to talk about this in just a minute as well. But that trend line that you're seeing where it's starting at next to nothing, and then it's about the 6th month getting pretty strong, and then you see it's pretty level for the next 6 months, we're going to talk about that here. I think I've got another screen shot coming up for you that will kind of speak to that as well. But of the 6,500 visits, we had 5,500 of those came from organic search. The other 1,000 mostly came from email marketing. Our website through the blog, which is this whole web design thing, whole other conversation there about how do you design your blog knowing people are going to be entering your website through it as opposed to getting there from your home page. So another conversation for another day, but just a little piece, a little nugget to talk to your web developer about if you're using a content marketing strategy. Here's what we've found to be 7 elements of great blog posts. We are writing hundreds of blog posts a month on behalf of our customers, and we have an 11-step practice that we follow every time we write one because we found these 11 steps make us more likely to succeed from a ranking and from a Google perspective. And from those 11 steps, these 7 elements have kind of been boiled down for you. But the first there is start with a keyword or phrase in mind. Repeat it 3 to 4 times throughout the content. Keeping that buyer's journey in mind. Keep thinking about what are they going to do, what are they going to be responding to. So in that Living Social example I just showed you, we were answering our customer questions about how much does it cost to be on Living Social. So that was our keyword or phrase we started with, and we just repeated that throughout our blog in a very natural conversational way. Write 500 to 700 words. The majority of people we see who say, oh yeah, I'm doing blogging, I have a blogging strategy, what that means to them is that they're publishing a post a couple times a month, and it's usually 200 to 300 words. But what we have found in writing hundreds of blog posts a month and thousands of blog posts over the last 3 to 5 years is that 500 to 700 words is an optimal length. Google will ignore anything less than 300, so don't even waste your time writing less than 300 unless it's just meant for an internal audience, which is fine. There are blogs that are meant for that. But if you're trying to rank, it needs to be 500 to 700 words. And it just really what's driving the range there is how much do you have to say. Don't just fill it with fluff because you're trying to hit a certain word count. But don't write too short a post or you're not going to get any traction with it. Make sure that you're including an image or two to break that content up and make it visually interesting. It will also help you by giving you an image you can use to promote that in your email marketing or in your social media marketing, other channels that you might be using that blog post to promote it. Make sure you're using internal and external links. We found kind of a minimum of 2. Don't want to go too much because if you have too much out there, you're just sending traffic away, but Google doesn't want to see dead ends either. So make sure you are including some external links. And those internal links are important as well to help your user, if they enter your website through that blog, having some internal links to get them to go into other parts of your site is important. And then using white space. Nobody likes to get to a post and they see just a huge paragraph of text with no white space in it. It's overwhelming, and you'd be surprised how much your bounce rate will go up if you don't use appropriate white space in your content. So using that white space is crazy enough will actually bring your bounce rate on posts down, which helps make sure that your customer is actually reading the message that you want them to read. And then share it all over. You've done all this work, you've created this great blog post, now make sure you have a strategy to share that, promote that post. Social media, blogging, email marketing. If you're at a cocktail happy hour, networking hour, tell people about the blog you just wrote. Tell them that you'll send them a copy of it. Use that in all the different parts of your marketing strategy to get it out there, get eyeballs on it to accomplish the purpose that you wrote it for in the first place. And then that last piece there is post weekly. And this is absolutely critical. The consistency of posting is what really drives a lot of the success that we see from an overall organic traffic perspective. If you're posting once a month or once every 2 weeks, you're just not going to have the same level of success that you would if you posted weekly. I've got a lot of peers in the industry that say post daily, and that's great. If you have the budget for that as from a marketing perspective, or you have the time for that and you have that much to say, that's awesome. Post weekly, or excuse me, post daily if you can. But for most of us, posting weekly is more going to be in line with the budget and the time that you may have to kind of set aside for blogging. So it's a great goal. We wouldn't necessarily recommend doing anything less than weekly, but it's a good goal to strive towards. And I told you we were going to come back to that and to take a look at that 6-month ramp up and how it kind of leveled off after 6 months. Not that we necessarily wanted to level off, but of all the customers we have launched this for, which we've launched blogging strategies for well over 100 customers now, it's amazing how consistent this data is. And what we see is the first 3 months of blogging weekly on keyword-specific topics, we see almost 0 results. And you saw that in the graphic I shared earlier, which is from our website. This is an actual customer's graphic from their first 6 months. But we analyze this for our customers, and time and again we see this trend line regardless of seasonality or anything else. In the 4th through the 6th month, Google really starts rewarding our efforts, and they start ranking our blogs. And I believe this is important because they know a lot of people know blogging is powerful, but they also know, and I say they, I mean Google also knows that people don't have the commitment to really stick it out and to put into it what they need to put into it to be successful. So knowing that, I think that the part of their algorithm factors in the consistency over a period of time. And by having that consistency over a period of time, you're proving to Google that you're committed to this strategy, that you're not that flash in the pan, and that you're really going to stick it out. And as a result, they reward you over the next 3 to 6 months for those efforts that you're putting in. So make sure you're committing to it. If you can't commit to doing this for at least 6 months and blogging weekly out of the gate, don't even waste your time starting it. I know that's a bold statement to make, but I'm absolutely serious, because you won't see the results and you'll say, Matt was a liar. That was the biggest waste of time I've ever had. But you've got to give it the full 6 months to see the results. And when you do that and you're doing it the way we've talked about, you will see success over those 6 months. Looks a little bit differently for everybody. The level of success is a little bit different for everybody, but you will see success over a period of time if you commit to posting weekly for at least 6 months. All right, let's dive in here and keep moving along. The strategy 1 and 2, we're going to spend a lot of time today, lots of tips going into that. Strategies 3 through 7, we're going to move a little bit quicker on, and we're going to leave some time for questions and answer at the end of our time together today. So if you've got questions burning in your mind, you can drop them in the chat panel at any time. And then at the end of our conversation, we'll swing back to that and get some of those questions answered. So strategy number 3, use social media to stay top of mind. And a common misconception here is that no one cares that I ran 6 miles today. And I'm a big runner, right? So that's why we put that in here. But I also understand that social media is not about me just touting my own prowess or speed or athleticism as a runner. It's about just engaging with people and using different types of content out there to tell a story about what's going on. And people may not necessarily care that you're having coffee at Starbucks or that you're running 6 miles today, but they do want to know what's going on in the life of your business, the major milestones, things you're celebrating, things you're working on. And then, of course, on a personal side, they want to know what's going on with you personally as well. But from a business perspective, you have a lot of opportunity to share things. One of the things we hear about social media, and we see this a lot, is that it just gets overwhelming, right? I mean, there's all these networks, and every Mark Zuckerberg to be who's in Harvard or whatever college they're in right now is trying to come up with the next great social network so they can get bought out for $15 billion like the last socialnetwork.com boom deal. But don't be overwhelmed by everything that's out there, all the noise that's out there. Really focus on doing 1 to 2 platforms really well. And when you're doing that, think about the things that come most naturally to you. If you're going to manage this on your own, think about the 1 or 2 platforms that are going to come the most naturally to you and that you tend to like for your own use the best, because that's the way you're going to do it the best. If you're most excited about a couple platforms, you're going to do the best job of marketing on those. So instead of just throwing everything out there and hoping something works and being overwhelmed by all of it, just focus on getting on a couple and doing those really, really well. Make sure that you're sharing great photos and videos, especially ones that elicit emotional responses. We all know it now in social media that that text just doesn't have the same level of engagement that photos do, but we still see a lot of people sharing way too much text. Keep your text to a minimum and use an image that kind of tells your story and can connect with the headlines to drive people back where you want them to go. And then another way to use social media well is making sure that you're connecting with other pages by tagging them in your posts. So if you're working with partner businesses or referral partners or whatever, customers perhaps, make sure that when you're posting things, you're tagging them in your posts, you're promoting other people's content to really get them engaged with what you're doing and kind of showing the whole network part of social media. Really important part to tie in there. And then show the humanity behind your software. Make sure that you're sharing culture with your customers. Let your employees be that hero. It's a great opportunity to help your customers engage with and interact with your employees and see that you're more than just kind of a brand. See that there's actual people, there and who are working with them. And people tend to sometimes have their customer support favorites, the people that come in and save the day for them. And then you can get great engagement and great comments from your customers when they see those employee photos posted, because it helps them feel more connected, and they may actually spur them to kind of tell their customer support story about some time that so-and-so swept in and saved the day for them. So, and then last but not least, highlight price promotions. I mean, you got to use this sparingly, but making sure that you're telling that story and being able to share campaigns and promotions that you're running on social media, and even using boosted posts when applicable to do this, so that you build your following, and then when you've got a price promotion or a special or something, or a message you really want to get out, you can boost that post to reach more people. The other thing we like to look at is making sure that we're growing at 5 to 10% per month. Make sure that you have a strategy to grow your social media following. It's important because that's the number of people who are engaged with you, engaged with your content, and interacting with you, and the number of the percentage of viral reach you could potentially get by getting people to interact with you. If you got 3,000 people engaged with you, liking you, then you have a much more extended reach through all of their friends than you would otherwise. And making sure that your presence is growing. Most people's presence isn't growing. It's relatively flat. And we use this screenshot here just to kind of show a customer that we started working with. They had about 1,000 fans when we started with them. And April through June, it was relatively flat. And then you see in June, we took over the management of it. And you see that kind of strong growth curve June on through October. And this is a screenshot from last year with a new customer we had taken on. But it's so important to grow that following. And we just use this as an example to encourage you to grow your following, because it's the amount of people, again, that you have the opportunity to reach with that message, reach with that product price promotion, but then also to hopefully that birds of a feather mentality extend that reach beyond those people. So then if you open your workbook, there's a little bit on social media here you can kind of dive into. We'll keep moving along, but there's a little bit to touch on with social media there in your workbook to at least get you started on that if you don't currently have a social media strategy. Strategy number 4 is to do the SEO basics to succeed, and then we put that in there at the least. SEO is absolutely a critical element. There's a lot of misconceptions wrapped around it. A lot of people believe SEO is dead. In reality, it's not dead. People are still Googling stuff all the time. Just like everything, it's changing. And you've got to be changing with it, or you're going to get left behind. Unfortunately, we see a lot of software companies. I've talked to a lot of software companies that just don't think SEO is applicable to them for whatever reason. And I'm sure everybody's got their reasonings, but when customers are out there looking, and I get that oftentimes it's a big purchase, and they may not start that big purchase in the same way other people buy other products and services, but you've got to be in the mix from a Google perspective. People have to be able to find you. And when we say at the least, this is kind of what we're talking about here, the next few tips here. Make sure that you claim and optimize your Google Plus page. No one's really using Google Plus, right, as a social network, or very few people are, but you still need to have a page there. You still need to have a presence there. Make sure that your website address is up to date. Make sure it's included. Make sure you've got photos of your property or your office, the different elements of what's going into your business to pull people in. And make sure that you're posting some blog posts there as well. When you're writing that great blog content, posting those to your Google Plus page is a great way to tell Google, hey, I just published this new blog. You should check it out and you should rank it. and that's going to help you bring that traffic in. We talked about in the previous strategy about blogging. And then make sure you're showing up in the local map if you have a local business. If you're a software company and local isn't necessarily your focus, this is less applicable to you, but if you have a local business and you're relying on local customers, you've got to make sure you're in the local map, because more and more that is the place people are going to find you. And then you may have, if you followed SEO much, you may have heard this term NAP thrown around, and that's not talking about Google's nap pods that they've become so famous for, where the employees go take naps. It's actually your name, address, and phone number. And as silly as it seems, Google has made a big deal out of making sure that your name, address, and phone number are uniform across listings, and making sure that that's the same everywhere it appears. So we recommend kind of creating a use guide for your marketing team, if you have one, or for yourself, that says every time I publish my name, address, phone number, this is how it's going to be. Am I going to abbreviate drive or not? Am I going to spell out the state or not? You know, some of these types of things that seem like silly things to really think about, but if your name, address, phone number is a big deal to Google, you need to make sure that it's consistent. And make sure that your employees know that doesn't mean that they should go take naps. You tell them you don't want them to focus on their nap. You just need them to make sure it's uniform across listings. But then the last piece here, the next piece here, if you're down year over year, if your organic traffic is down year over year, the way people are changing, the way Google is changing has led some people's organic traffic to be down, because they're trying to keep more traffic on their site on google.com as opposed to sending as much off of it as they used to. So they're consistently making changes to do that, keep people on google.com or on their different apps and so forth. But if your traffic is down, increase the amount of blogging that you're doing. If you're working with an SEO company now and they're not talking to you about blogging, they're about 2 to 3 years behind the knowledge curve from what it takes to succeed with content marketing and SEO. So if you're engaged with somebody, they're not having that conversation with you, I'd encourage you to consider making a change there, because they're way behind the curve. But blogging or content marketing is going to be the most successful thing you can do to impact your organic search traffic to your actual website or your organic search rankings in general. And if you're still down after you've increased blogging and you've done everything you can think to do, that's a great time to reach out to someone who can help you understand why. If you're kind of at the end of your knowledge, that's a good time to reach out to somebody and say, hey, you know, what can I do here? What's going on? How do I need to get up there? But understanding how much search volume there is for the keywords you're targeting can kind of say, you know, if there's 1,900 monthly searches for a keyword you want to be ranked for and you're not ranked for it, that's 1,900 chances every single month to reach a potential customer that you're failing to do right now. So it's really important to make sure that you're in the mix from an overall organic ranking perspective. Strategy number 5, have a 5-star review strategy. This is kind of different, like it's a different way to think about, but it ties back to that brand discipleship a little bit and making sure that your customers are engaged with you. Your customers can absolutely be one of the strongest sources of driving traffic to your website if they're giving you 5-star reviews, and we use that kind of as a way of saying, making sure that they're engaged, that they're out there as brand disciples. But we also do mean making sure that they're posting testimonials on Google Plus as well. But this is a great opportunity, a great tool to use in easing that prospect concern as they're selecting a new software partner, and using different mediums to tell that story, using your blog to tell success stories, using some video to tell success stories, using testimonials on the Google Plus page, or testimonials kind of interlaced throughout your website, using short 1- and 2-sentence testimonials throughout your content as well can be a great way for people to be able to just kind of slowly get at ease. So instead of having that like formal reference check, just kind of showing them some testimonials throughout their buyer's journey is a great way to kind of put them at ease with that decision that they're making and help them know that they're making the right choice with choosing you. There's also some automation you can wrap around this. You can use autoresponders within an email marketing software that, you know, every time you wrap up an onboarding process, whether you have a customer survey that kind of asks them how that experience was, and if they answer certain questions, it gives them it kind of puts you out there with, and then asks for the 5-star review, and then links them back to Google+. But using autoresponders can help you automate that. If you're not running huge volume through your onboarding process, automation may be less of a concern, but then it's just looking for ways to kind of push those testimonials to Google+, And don't be afraid to ask for them either. You know, it's not necessarily faux pas to ask for that testimonial either. So making sure that you're going to your best customers and asking them for those testimonials and helping them phrase it in a way that it communicates what you want it to communicate. So there's a little bit of a little exercise you can do in your workbook on that can kind of help you through it. Strategy number six is a bit different as well. It's not specifically how do we drive traffic, but let's set goals for each of these areas. Each of the areas we're focused on, we believe, and we're very goal-oriented as a company, and we teach our teams to be, but what gets written gets done. And when you set goals for each of your areas, it helps you kind of put it on paper and commit to it and say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go after this. I'm going to commit to this. And it helps you get it done. And then the other piece that this can really do is if you're not responsible for your marketing, that maybe somebody on your team is, or you're working with a marketing partner who is, it's a great way to hold them accountable. If you're responsible for it, we encourage you to find an accountability partner that can hold you accountable. If someone else on your team is responsible for it, you are going to be that accountability partner potentially for that person. But setting goals kind of puts that number out there for everybody to reach towards. And as we're looking at driving more traffic, what we have found is the people that are setting goals are the ones that are driving more traffic back to their website. So that's kind of why we brought it in here as one of our 7 strategies, because we know percentage-wise if you sit down and go through this process, and there's a great tool in the workbook to do this, kind of an entry-level tool but to help you get some goal setting done. They will absolutely help you get better results, a year into it than you'd have seen otherwise. So I encourage you to use your workbook to do that. And then strategy number 7, we were doing all these things to drive traffic. We're setting goals so we know what we're reaching for. And then strategy number 7, also a bit different, but review your analytics at least monthly. We ideally tell people weekly, but you need to be in your Google Analytics weekly. You need to be in your CRM or marketing automation software, whatever you're using weekly, to really understand how it's performing, what's working, what's not, what campaigns are working, what campaigns are not. But you've got to do it at least monthly. At an absolute minimum, you need to be doing it at least monthly. You need to be reviewing your data also year over year. Based on what you sell, what service or solution you're selling, there may be some seasonality. But then also looking at the trend line of the year as a whole and comparing that month to month to see, is our traffic growing? Like that screenshot I showed you earlier of blogging and seeing how that's growing month over month. Making sure that it's not just out there to say, okay, well, yeah, my traffic's up, but it's seasonal, but making sure that you're looking at the whole picture from a traffic perspective. And this helps you really start making the habit of making data-driven decisions. We see a lot of people making emotional-based marketing decisions, and you start to see it when people use words like, I think that, or, those types of things. If you're making decisions by saying, I think that this would be good, that's an example most of the time of an emotional decision. And what we want to do is be able to make data-driven decisions. Instead of I think this would be good, being able to say, hey, we ran this campaign last year and these were the results, and if we tweak this, the results are going to be this. So using the data that we have access to be able to make data-driven decisions in our overall marketing strategies, which will help us support our sales team and ultimately get to a place where we can predict revenue. As business owners, as marketing directors, most of us are either thinking of for ourselves or being held accountable to specific revenue goals. And being able to develop develop strategies and make decisions to support those revenue goals based off the data we have. We also talked a little bit about the leaky bucket test, which is something that we've kind of coined to talk about as a way to determine the sources from which you're losing traffic. Most of the time we're talking about places we're gaining traffic from, and that's awesome and that's exciting and that's what people want to talk about. But you've also got to be aware of and looking for places you might be losing traffic that came to your website last year. This might be a link to your website from a referral partner or a software solutions provider that may be in the mix of what's going on. And you've got to make sure that you're looking at that leaky bucket test to see any sources you've lost traffic from. There's a way you can filter that in Google Analytics that we'd be happy to share with you. We don't have a screenshot of it for you today. Probably should have, but we don't have a screenshot today. But it's a cool little thing you can do just to make sure you're not losing traffic from any key sources. And then the last thing there, if you're not monitoring your analytics at least monthly or ideally weekly, you'd be surprised what information, what decisions, what insights might be hiding in your data. Every time we dive into data, we do a lot of analytics analysis with potential customers. The free thing that we do, just kind of help them out, help them get in their data, see what's working, what's not. They're always surprised to see what insights we're able to gather by looking into the data. They're always surprised how much we can tell them about their own business just by looking at the data and telling them about their own marketing strategy. Your analytics is almost like your little crystal ball to what's going on in your own marketing world, or it should be, at least if you're looking at it and knowing how to use that data well. So what's my next step, right? I mean, one of the things, I travel a lot, I speak a lot, go to a lot of conferences, and sometimes you go to a talk like this, or you go to a webinar, you get fired up, you're like, man, I'm pumped up, I'm excited about these 7 strategies, or I'm excited about this customer service thing I just heard, whatever the topic is, but you kind of, you take down some notes and you get home from the conference or you get off the webinar and business starts happening again. You start getting busy and you fail to take that next step. So one of the commitments we've made as a company is to be a resource to the industry and to help people take their next step. So we don't want you to go away from a webinar and just not be sure what your next step is, but to always have one lined up for yourself to take. And as a part of that, we're giving away our free marketing grader. It's software that we have that will actually help you understand on a scale of 0 to 100. We'll give you a score that says how well is your marketing performing. We've also run this test for lots of different companies, and we'll give you something to compare it to. So you know, based on the industry as a whole, the market as a whole, how does my score compare to other people? Is it good? Is it bad? And help you get an understanding of some things you can do there. Another great takeaway from you is that we'll give you action items, usually about 20 to 25 action items to make immediate improvements, immediate changes to your marketing strategy that will help you do a better job and get a higher score. But more importantly, what that means is you'll drive more leads and more sales through your marketing strategy. It's kind of a Richter scale type deal. The closer you get to 100, the more nitpicky the examples are, the more nitpicky the ideas are. So it's harder and harder to get that next point, the next step that you take to get up that ladder another step. And then the last thing, we'll also use this time, it's about a 30-minute call we'll schedule with you, but we'll use this time to answer any specific marketing questions you may have that we didn't get an opportunity to address today or that you may not ask in the chat panel, although we do encourage you to use that chat panel to do that today. So if you would like to take advantage of this free marketing grader, we'll be sending an email out afterwards so you can request that, but you can also just email Anne Marie and she'd be happy to set up a time where we can review that marketing grader with you. So I encourage you to take advantage of that free grader and free call to get some information there. Awesome. So let's dive in here. I know we've got some questions that have kind of popped in the chat panel here as I've been talking. It's 2:53, so we'll stick around here for a couple minutes and answer some quick questions here. Awesome. Let's see what we've got here in the chat panel. All right. Question here, how can I grow my database? That's a great question. Lots of different ways to do that. One, and not necessarily always something we recommend, although it does have a time and a place, is to actually buy a strategic database of contacts you may want to be going after. Again, not necessarily the best practice, but there are cases where it works. We actually just signed an agreement to buy some software from a vendor today. And somewhere in the sales process, the sales guy told me, we got your name because we bought a database of people who were doing business with one of our competitors. So we dropped into their campaign and did that, and now we signed a contract with them today to be a software provider for us. So a great example of how it can work in your favor. But some more organic strategies to grow your database. We use lead generation quite a bit, specifically to grow a database and grow people who are interested in a product or service or solution. And that's really essentially the concept of just giving something away on your website that you know is of value, that you know speaks to part of that buying process, giving that away on the website in exchange for name, phone, email. The more valuable what you're giving away is, the more you can ask for in exchange for it. But it's a great way to turn anonymous people on your website into subscribers to your blog or subscribers to your newsletter by giving them something of value. Especially if you have a lot of blogs ranked, you're getting a lot of traffic from that over a period of time, using lead generation to convert that traffic into actual leads, which ultimately will build your database as well. Lots of other things you can do. I mean, social media campaigns, different promotions, but those are some of the top ones that we see being most successful. Another question here, should I use the same content across all channels, or do they need to be tweaked, adjusted based on the channel? The content needs to be repurposed a little bit for sure. I mean, you're not necessarily going to post an entire blog onto a social network, for example, but also understanding how that channel works or network works and being able to tweak that, adjust it, as you mentioned in your question, but repurpose it a bit too, making sure that when you build the content the first time, you've built it out with that stuff in mind. So as I talked about earlier with including images in your blog, that's going to help you when you go share that on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, because it's going to pull that image in, and hopefully that's a good image that actually represents what you're talking about and is engaging, and it's going to help you drive traffic back to that blog by having that great image be a part of it. So wouldn't say it has to be completely different content, but just looking for ways you can kind of repurpose and tweak to promote it on different channels based on the way those channels best respond to content. Another question here. You talk about images. What makes an image good? Where to find advice on size? I think for me, it's more of an intangible, but what makes an image good is really just that, does it have an impact? When you see that image, are you impacted? Do you connect with that? We talked about eliciting emotional responses, but that's all about getting someone to connect with that image. There are tons of stock photo libraries you can use. If you have a budget to get professional photography done that's more specific to your business and your customer, that's great. We always recommend that. We work with some really talented professional photographers for our customers to do that. But in the absence of that, and actually the photo that was on the email campaign we sent out as a part of this was a stock photo we got from ThinkStock, which is a stock photo library that we subscribe to. So great place to get it. You really got to be careful, though, if you're using Google image searches, which a lot of people do, and just pulling in images, you can get yourself in trouble with copyright laws and things like that. So make sure that you're using images you actually have the right or the license to use, and when you're finding those. And then size-wise is going to vary based on what platform you're on. Understanding, do you want a full-width kind of hero-style image like is kind of the trend in web design right now, or do you need a smaller, faster to load email size image? But using different sizes based on the platform and thinking about how someone's going to interact with that. Are they going to be on a mobile device? Are they going to be on a desktop? And really optimizing your image based on that. So, but don't go too small, and then it gets stretched. If your image is too small and it gets stretched, it will definitely cause quality issues and not be great for your users. And it's amazing how much an image can impact you in a good way or in a negative way. If you use a great image, it makes a campaign really come alive. We've sent almost identical campaigns and just switched out the image before and had unbelievably different results. All the rest of the campaign was the same, just swapped out the image at the top, and it dramatically changed our results. So using a great image will absolutely have a big impact in making sure it's sized appropriately for you. So I think that's the end of the questions that we have in here. If you've got one and we haven't had a chance to answer it, give you just another minute here to pop that in. If not, if we don't have any more questions, thanks everybody for your attendance. Hopefully our 7 strategies today kind of got you thinking. That's it, right? We want to just stimulate your mind, stimulate your thought process. Keep an eye on your inbox for that the offer for the free marketing grader, and we'll also be sending a copy of the recording out. So keep an eye on your inbox for that as well. Thanks everybody for attending today. If there's anything we can do to help or any other questions we haven't answered for you today, you can always catch us via email as well. My email address is there on the screen as well as my phone number. If you have questions, we're happy to answer those for you. You can also